United States should be saying to parents all over the world, if you want to bring your children here to Disneyland, make sure that they have been adequately vaccinated for mumps, measles, and rubella, period.
Public health expert Betsy McCoy earlier this week right here on America's Forum discussing the measures our nation needs to take to stop the spread of measles right here on our soil. With Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth. Miranda, we thought measles were gone, but they're making a big comeback.
Right.
It's, and Arizona, the site of the Super Bowl this week, suddenly now they're tracking 1,000 people there who may have been exposed.
And let's not forget about what's going on at Disneyland. And then I think recently we reported the other day that 66 students were suspended from school because they weren't properly vaccinated. And so they said, no, we have one student that's been exposed. You need to keep the kids at home.
Have to take public health measures. We've taken a public health measure today. We're so pleased to have here on our anchor desk Dr. Sanjay Jain, board certified physician and the author of Optimal Living 360. Smart decision-making for a balanced life.
Good to have you here in the flesh.
It's great to be here. I love it here in Florida. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
We are glad that you're here. And we're also concerned about this measles outbreak. What's behind it?
You know, we just had Ebola, now we got measles, so it's really something that just came the past month. 1,000 people, outbreak with the measles. It's crazy because it hasn't happened since 2000, year 2000. So we used to have 500, 600,000 people back in the 50s and 60s and really eradicated. But now that this outbreak has started to come up, the CDC is very concerned about it.
Well, so doctor, why are parents choosing not to vaccinate their kids? Why all the controversy?
There's a lot of misinformation out there. People say, are my kids going to be autistic? Are they going to have other problems, mental issues? And that hasn't been proven. So there's a lot of misinformation out there with that.
I've heard a lot of reports about that.
We've not only seen a reluctance on the part of some parents to immunize their children, but there have been an influx of people, both illegally coming across our border, but as Betsy McCoy was pointing out the other day, apparently we're not real sticklers in terms of visas or international travel allowing people in either. In your mind, how much could these two factors weigh in on this outbreak?
It plays a huge factor because in the Philippines they have 50,000 people with the measles. So there's a lot of travel between the Philippines and Western California, that area, and the regulations and how they keep track of the measles in other countries can affect how we keep track of it here. So there has to be not only public health measures in our country but in other countries as well.
Well, I want to play a little fact versus fiction here. Tell us about vaccines, because there are a lot of parents out there that say they don't really work. Fact or fiction?
That is fiction because they do work. And so I'm not sure where they're getting this information, but the fact we see it right now. We have 1,000 people with an outbreak, and the reason why there's an outbreak is because these kids have not been vaccinated. And the reason why people don't understand is because there's a whole generation who hasn't seen measles, and they're like, what are measles? Because people in the 50s, 60s, they knew about it, but a whole generation has missed it, and they don't really know that this actually exists.
Now, Sanjay, maybe you can help clear something up in my mind. As a baby boomer, a guy who arrived on the planet in the late 1950s, I've heard some talk that the vaccines that guys got in the late 50s, early 60s may run out, or that there's need to be certain booster shots. Is there any veracity to that about the measles vaccine?
The measles vaccines, there's not a shortage. And what they recommend is that you take these measles vaccines at early age of, between the 12 and 15 months as a child. Then the next second booster that you mentioned at 6 years old. Now, if you're an adult and you miss these shots, you can still take them as an adult. You have a gap between 28 days to take them. So you can still take them as an adult, but I'm not sure about this shortage.
So it's not time like for boomers. It may be the guys that got the initial shot, but then their parents got spooked about carrying it out. And so really, we're talking about the echo of the baby boom, probably people in the late 70s. That could be a legitimate concern.
Yes.
So another question for you. A lot of people speculate that vaccines are what cause autism. I've heard a lot of parents say that. So they're scared of that. Fact or fiction?
Right now I'm saying right now that's fiction, but they're still researching it. They haven't really been able to pin it on vaccines. And there's a lot of causes for autism. It could be coincidental. So we don't know yet in terms of the research, and there's a lot more to be studied about it. I'm not discounting the parents that are concerned about it. There are some incidents where they say, well, my child has become autistic right after they got vaccinated, but we haven't been able to prove it yet.
Have vaccines changed a lot since the 1950s?
Since the Stone Age?
Since
Well,
the start? No, since the 50s.
They're always improving vaccines, and you know the basic core has been the same, but they're always improving it. There's been tweaks here and there, but you know with technology, there's always improvement for sure.
Let me switch gears a little bit, because measles, that's a heavy subject. Since you wrote Optimal Living 360, I want to move to another sector of life: entertainment, spectacle, sports, and sit in front of the tube. All the Super Bowl parties this weekend. Does that become like, you know how it is at Christmas time when everybody's chowing down and the heck with the diet and stuff? Does this become like a 2-day binge for people? Is it dangerous in a way?
You know, it's meant to be fun, but the problem is when it goes a little too far. When it goes too far, you can have problems. Domestic violence, you know, when you're really stressed, the biggest thing is stress. You know, if your team is not winning, especially those two teams in those two cities where it's really intense. As a casual fan, you love the commercials, but those two cities where it's really intense, domestic violence goes up, it could be a problem. The drinking binge goes up, so you're not thinking clearly. You have to be very defensive when you leave a Super Bowl party. Be a defensive driver. Kind of be more careful when you're driving around, kind of like after New Year's Eve, because there are people who have been drinking. You've got to be very careful. And then people who are on medications, who have heart disease, diabetes, they take all the salt, hypertension, so their blood pressure goes up. People have actually had heart attacks after an incident. There's a guy who, I think in the Pittsburgh game, the guy fumbled and someone had a heart attack. So there has to be some measures and kind of mindfulness when these things, events happen.
I would get my brother-in-law like that squishy ball or
Oh, yeah,
like
we get the
foamy
straight-
thing.
yeah. And
Does that work?
I've never tried it.
We're laughing about it, but does
I've
it
never
work?
tried it. Might be a good idea to have a Nerf football instead of a real football and throw it at your television. But, you know, it's good to enjoy the game, be mindful, enjoy the commercials, enjoy the camaraderie, but be smart for sure.
And be responsible.
Absolutely.
And maybe find a designated driver if you're going to go out
Right.
and engage in some, I don't know, imbibing. Listen, Dr. Sanjay Jain, as always, we appreciate your wisdom and counsel, the medical knowledge you bring. The author of the book, again, Optimal Living 360. Dr. Sanjay Jain, thanks very much for coming and joining us here at the Anchor Desk. There's a good look at the Good Doctor's book. And straight ahead, there is a lot more to come. You heard the doctor talk about commercials. We're going to talk about that quite a bit today. I've got something to say this hour, the next hour as well. And America's Forum continues after this Newsmax Now update.